Hello, everyone. This lecture is an introduction to critical reasoning, and we'll get our course started. In English 1001, it's called Critical Thinking and Writing. And so in this class, you can expect to do critical thinking, writing, and reading. We will do a significant amount of reading exemplary texts to help you with your writing in this class. And really, our goal is to be able to think and respond to your environment critically, not just your academic writing, but beyond that. And so the essays and readings that we engage in this class should be a portal to understanding the outside world, especially as we are engaging in discussion boards as well. You can strive to make connections with the text. And those discussion boards have been set up for you in a way that you can make connections to the text. So, what is critical reasoning? This website listed here defines critical reasoning as the ability to actively and skillfully conceptualize, analyze, question, and evaluate ideas and beliefs. So, what does this really mean in simple terms? Critical reasoning is questioning the ideas or beliefs of others and oneself. And once we do that, we really are able to think for ourselves. Critical reasoning also gives us the ability to practice metacognition, which is reflecting on how we think and act. And this is a very important skill to have, like I said, not just in academics, but beyond academics as well. So, argument in writing. All language is motivated. Language is human, and humans have goals, purposes, and activities. And so the language that we use motivates us to get things done. Some scholars may argue that all language is inherently argument. And so we might even say that this lecture that I am giving you today is an argument. Having a conversation with your family member on where to order takeout from, that is inherently argument. And so some do say that argument is really all around us. And after today's lecture, you may start to realize that argument really is all around you. So argument makes this identification between the self and the audience. And we'll be practicing that this semester in our writing. Argument is open to interpretation and negotiation. And so the ability to use reasoning is going to be very important here. Okay, so there are several types of argument that we are going to be focusing on in this class. The first is forensic argument or forensic rhetoric. And this is an argument about the past. So think about solving a mystery or a crime, and maybe a lawyer is standing in front of a jury trying to convince the jury and the judge that their client is innocent. Deliberative argument or deliberative rhetoric is an argument about taking an action about the future. So the most common example here would be a political debate, because that argument involves what the outcome will or will not be on a certain course of action or decision. So we're looking towards the future when we talk about deliberative rhetoric. Epideictic rhetoric or epideictic argument is an argument about the present. So this is a debate about the state of society and what is happening here and now. Now, associated with these three types of argument are Aristotle's rhetorical appeals. And the most common, the one that we probably understand the easiest is logos, the appeal to logic or reason. And this is looking at the structure or the content of the text. Oftentimes, we refer to logos as using statistics and data and common sense. Right? Ethos is an appeal to credibility or trustworthiness. So we're asking ourselves, or maybe our readers are asking of us, how well does the author portray themselves? In Aristotle's time, if we go back to the definition of ethos, it was really more about the author's perspective on the subject and if we, as the audience, could trust that perspective. And so it's kind of evolved over time now, and we look at it in terms of the author's credibility. Next is pathos, which is an emotional appeal. And so, again, in Aristotle's time, this was more about the elements of a speech that appealed to the audience's sensibilities. And as it has kind of evolved, we sort of now analyze pathos as eliciting an emotional response from the audience. One of the best examples I can give is like the ASPCA commercials where they have the sad Sarah McLachlan music playing in the background. Maybe you have seen these before. And they have these images of these puppies who are in kennels and they look sad. And they are trying to convince you to donate to the ASPCA by saying, by just donating $1 a day, you could save this animal's life. And so that elicits maybe an emotion of guilt. Or even compassion or empathy. And so that is an appeal to the audience's emotion. Another appeal is kairos, and this is an element of speech that acknowledge and draw support from setting, time, and place that a speech occurs. So this kairos is looking at the context of the speech, kind of like what's happening around the time that this speech or maybe writing occurs. And so that is going to be very important in many of the texts that we study in this class. Now let's move over to your textbook reading here, chapter 1 of How Arguments Work. Anna Mills asks us why we should study argument. And so argument in college is a presentation of ideas using reasons as support. We mentioned that earlier, right? In an earlier slide. And argument and writing is really going to help us in academics and our career. It doesn't matter what major you are going into, you will be doing writing. Nurses are going to have to do patient reports. Engineers are also going to have to write up reports. It's not just English and history majors who have to do writing. And I often tell the story of a dear friend of mine who was an engineer who I went to college with. And when he got his big time engineering job, he asked me to help him with some writing just to proofread it. And I'll never forget when he told me that he wished he would have paid more attention in his composition classes because he didn't think that he would be doing as much writing as he did as an engineer in his first big time engineering job. Argument is also something that will help boost your credibility as a thinker, being able to argue logically and clearly. Argument also helps us to gain power in society. And maybe that even has to do with, going on job interviews and kind of moving up the corporate ladder, right? You could potentially argue that your job interview is a form of argument where you are trying to convince the employer to hire you, right? Argument also helps us to participate in democracy and vote, right? And make decisions on how democracy should be run. In terms of college writing, right? Let's narrow and look at college writing. Argument is going to help us sharpen our thinking, and so that is really a goal for me as your instructor, that you guys would learn to sharpen your thinking. Argument in college writing also helps us to slow down our thinking, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. And in college writing, we also need each other's help. Argument gives us the opportunity to learn from others because we come from so many different backgrounds and experiences. And so this is an opportunity to learn from each other and kind of refine our ideas. Okay. So chapter 1.2, Anna Mills talks about this idea of fast thinking, and she gives a really great example in the textbook. And so she says that fast thinking is based on emotion. And so we have two kinds of biases that will come up when we're doing fast thinking. The first is confirmation bias. And she says that this is when we look for evidence that confirms what we already believe. So if we see a statement or a slogan and it already aligns with our values, then if we're fast thinking, we're going to agree with it. Right. There's also this idea of availability bias, right? Where we decide what we think based on the examples, the evidence, or the experiences that just come to our mind right away, right? Or maybe what we've read most recently, right? Think about yourself scrolling on social media. Maybe, and a lot of people do this. We're scrolling and we see a headline and we automatically agree or disagree with what's going on without even clicking on the article and looking at the reasoning and the evidence, right? Fast thinking also, the danger in that is the spread of misinformation, right? And in recent years, we've had this trend of kind of fake news, right? You've probably heard that term before, and so fast thinking can kind of get us into that pattern. And so we have to be very careful when we are exposed to information, and we do, make snap judgments based on emotion. That's a very human thing to do. There's nothing wrong with it. But what we're going to focus on in this class is slow thinking. And slow thinking is going to be something that is going to be so important to you as a college student. And so Anna Mills takes it in the textbook, takes us through kind of the process of slow thinking in the college classroom. So first she says, maybe we read an argument and we make a snap decision based on emotion, but then we have to go back and we have to slow down our thinking. Right. And so the first thing that we will probably do is define some key terms. And maybe we are going to analyze the connotation of those words or the emotion behind those words, and see if it's perhaps related to pathos, right? An appeal to emotion. We may also have to clarify ideas from the argument, that perhaps in our fast thinking we misinterpreted or didn't understand originally when we read it. And then also we have to go and do research. You're going to do research in this class. It's going to be a very important part of your writing, where we're going to go out and we're going to try to find balanced research, right? Which is very difficult, but looking at, multiple perspectives on an issue, so that we are making a fair assessment of the argument. And so by the time we get through all of that, we have to recognize that maybe your fast thinking, your gut reaction, maybe it's going to change. And you may experience that in this class, right? Where you pick a topic on something and you think that you already know what you're going to write about. But as you read texts and you define key terms, you clarify ideas and you research, it's okay if your opinion changes. There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, that's probably a sign of a good thing because it means that you are using your critical reasoning. So that brings us to the end of this lecture. Please make sure that you also watch the TED video that goes along with the rhetorical appeals. Okay.